Welcome everyone to Writing as a Nurse, Diagrams and Flowcharts. This is one of the very targeted, practical hands-on webinars offered by the ACU Online Writing Center. For more information about other Online Writing Center services, you can pause the video and read the slides, or you can go to pretty much any other webinar recording that we have and hear more about the Writing Center. We're going to dive in together, and we're going to look at two assignments in Nursing 703 that ask you to prepare visual aids, flowcharts, or diagrams. So we're going to look specifically at Nursing 703's Week 3 Practice Learning Experience 3 assignment and the Creating Workflow Diagrams assignment. Now, these two assignments have a basic set of instructions. For the first one, you're asked to study workflow processes in your practice and pick one to diagram for the assignment, and then write about it. And the writing about it is not really a problem for most people. This is kind of a narrative reflection, so you can talk about yourself and your experiences and any insights you may have, or why you chose to draw things the way that you did. Let's talk about how to specifically do that. Now, this is asking you to show how one thing feeds into another, the flow of the workflow, so the flow of the work process. And this could be multiple inputs, it could be sequential inputs, it could be parallel, where lots of things are happening at the same time. And there are different ways you might depict that. So here's a workflow diagram for emergency departments that I got from the Israel Journal of Health Policy Research. And you can see that this is not an entirely linear process, because when a decision is made to admit a patient, they need the admitting physician. They check the documents. When the physician approves, there's some additional examinations they get, and they wait for a decision. And that might involve, oh, we need to have another physician because we've discovered something very particular. A common one is, we need the radiologist because we are doing some x-rays, for example. Or it might be, oh, hold on, they have this particular disorder, so we need an endocrinologist coming in. And that may involve more than one round of this examinations and checking documents before there's the passing things to the admitting department and the approval, according with the transfer, and then eventually leaving the emergency department altogether. So where treatment is, well, that could happen at multiple points here, but we're not getting that granular, just talking about the general workflow here. There may be elements that you choose to include or exclude based on the purpose of that workflow diagram. Now, if we look at the other assignment, we find that it's fairly similar. The objective of this assignment is to make a simple one-page or single-screen workflow diagram of any process related to your area of nursing practice that is of interest to you. And you'll see that it's very open. You can do it with any software you want, such as Word or PowerPoint or specialized software. You just need to be able to export it as a PDF file and upload it. All right, well, that's fairly straightforward, so let's get hands-on. Now, if you want to go through a step-by-step resource, I've provided 3 here for variations on it, but we're going to look at a couple different tools ourselves. And one of them that I'm going to show is this flowchart and diagram maker. So this is a web program. It does not charge. It does not require a login, which is why I'm using it today, because often this kind of resource requires that you set up an account, and that may or may not be something that you actually want to do. You see, I've drafted something here earlier. Let's just start out. And so I've opened this up here. And right now, there's nothing here. So let's do a new thing. And you can choose between various templates or kind of preset things. And some people work better if they're editing something to start. Some people like to just start out from scratch. So let's say we're going with the flowchart here, and let's take this one here. So you can see that there are a number of set elements here. And you might say, well, okay, so we're going to have this branching input, but I don't really need this. And so you might select some things and just press delete. You might also say, okay, hold on, I have another input. Let me grab this arrow here, and let me put that over here. Now you'll see that one of the advantages here is that it gives you this lane diagram here, and in this case, a pool. All right, maybe that's not the kind of thing you're looking for. Well, let's go ahead and create a new one. And let's say that we are looking for an organization chart. Now, just because it says swim lane diagram doesn't mean you have to be doing a chart for swimming. It's just a general description of that. Let's go to flowchart here. And again, you can always create this from scratch, but often people find it helpful to start with the visual example of how something familiar works, and then to start adding on and placing new things in here. So let's say that patient presents at hospital. And what happens next is this an ER priority? And if it's no, we send them to outpatient care. And if it's yes, we admit to ER. Now, the options that are available to you may vary based on the site. So for example, I've done some work at Regents Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. Regents Hospital is a level 1 trauma center, and it's also a major research hospital and a few other things. So they not only have the emergency room for urgent care, but they also have critical care, as well as the outpatient stuff. So if we wanted to add another thing, I can get an arrow here, and we can see you can reshape it there. You can always undo this by hitting Control Z if you're on a PC, or Command Z. I'm going to drag this over here, attach that point, move this here, and say, okay, well, I'm going to add a new thing, this diamond. I can move this around, and I can resize it if I want. And let's put in some text. And my text here, whoops, will be admit to critical care. Now, as you can see, it's been resizing things automatically, and that's very helpful, and one of the reasons why you might use a dedicated tool like this. Might also take this and say, okay, well, I want that to be a little bit larger, and you can see the arrows are automatically adjusted. And then I can always take this and move that around. All right, so it's a little lopsided now. Maybe I want to take this and move it down here, change my arrow here. You get the idea. So I can move all these different elements around as I please. Ultimately, if you go to File, Export As, and this assignment, the second assignment is required to be submitted as a PDF, then I just go to PDF and it'll save that. If I want to insert this into a Word document, as you would in the first assignment, we're going to want it in a picture format. So I'd use probably PNG here or JPEG. Either is going to be about the same. PNG will look a little bit nicer for this kind of flowchart here. Now, you can also go ahead and create this sort of resource just in Microsoft Word. So let's go ahead and let's look at a blank document in Word. All right, you should now see my screen in Microsoft Word. Let's zoom in a little bit. And I want to create a flowchart. So how can I go about doing it? Well, there are a couple ways. One thing I would not recommend is using the draw here, because although you can draw on screen here, it is just not designed for that kind of thing. And here, let's take this. It's not that I can't draw it, but it's going to look like I was drawing badly with crayon, as opposed to having those neat lines that characterize a well-drawn computer-assisted flowchart. So rather than the draw tool, we're going to go to Insert. And I'm going to recommend that we use the Smart Art tool here, because the Smart Art tool lets us quickly adjust things and have them dynamically moved. Now, you could be drawing up a hierarchical chart, or you could be diagramming a process that goes in a particular order, or a cycle, something that repeats. Let's go ahead and let's do cycle right now. So this gives us a couple things, and we see, oh, hey, that when I was drawing in white earlier, that kind of covers some stuff up. So I'm going to delete all that and see if there's anything else. All right, we got rid of that. So we're going to Insert and Smart Art. Let's do cycle, and I've decided I like the look of this one here, just the basic cycle here. Oops. So I have these placeholders here, and if I click into those, I get this menu on the side. So where are we going to start? Well, let's just say that I'm going to be drawing up a flow chart of staff activities. So one of the things I did at Regents Hospital is work with the, say, nurse advocate process. To not dwell on this, we'll say that this is something where if you present to the emergency room with a certain history, there's a process that goes in because of legal options that are available. And if you have worked in this environment, you'll recognize the terms that I'm using, and if anyone else, don't worry about it too much. So the first step, this process begins when a patient presents with relevant case history. In this case, they come and say, this thing happened to me. And when that begins, an action is triggered. And so we'll go to the next one in the list. And what happens is the admissions desk calls the sane nurse, and after that, the admissions desk calls the advocate, and then the sane nurse arrives on site. These are specialized roles that are not normally at the hospital, come in just for this thing. And that because the nurse gets the call first and is usually living a little closer, they usually arrive first. Then the advocate arrives. And now I'm out of points here. So if I just hit enter, you'll see it automatically creates a new spot here. And so we have the meeting with patient, and I can type that up and start to do and say, oh, well, hold on, I actually that's the patient intake, or the SANE intake process. So I can back up to that and change that. And then the actual exam. Then they receive post-exam counseling. Patient is discharged. And then the say nurse and advocate leave or return to on-call status. Now, something that this tool makes very easy is you saw how I was able to add new items here just by hitting enter. Now, you can also do things with the hierarchy because maybe there's some things that aren't on the same level. So, or are we want to indicate that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this arrow here. And so you see that we've made that a sub part of the other one. So let's go ahead and do that and say, okay, well, actually, the same nurse arriving on site is not a subset of that. It's actually of the previous one. So I can use this tool here and say, hold on, let's undo those. Let's move this one up and make that a subset of this one. And through that show, okay, so this is really a quick response to that level rather than a discrete step where we're doing things. Now, you might not find that this is quite what you want to show that because here this is a cycle going around and there aren't really branches on that. So maybe you decide, well, I want to go ahead and use another thing here. So again, going to insert smart art. What do we want? And you can have a process that has multiple steps here. So let's go ahead and let's start with this one here. So repeat bending process or basic bending. These are about when things are coming back. And see, all right. So let's go ahead and start this one out. And you can see that it's going along and then it flips over. Okay, so how would this look like? Let's just go ahead and put in some text here. So I can click on this button here and it pops things out here. And well, what does it look like if I add a sub bullet? Well, same thing. So this gives us a sense of it's more of a linear process that we've arranged for space to be on two lines. And now this is a process and not a cycle necessarily because it's not ending back at the starting place. So again, if we go look at our different options here, you may find that you want something more along the lines of let's say let's go with here a relationship because relationships are good for showing how some structures work. So let's say we're talking about the relationship of a specialist within a set of departments. So you might find that okay, we're going to depict the particular interactions, and let's say that we have here our we have a neonatal nurse here, and our neonatal nurse probably spends a lot of time in the NICU, but they might also go and they might also be doing a shift, helping out, covering for colleagues and stuff. They might also go and do some work in urgent care. They might also go and spend some time in pediatrics. And they might also go and do some public relations appearances. So these are, right now, they're of equal size, but we can alter this too. I can go ahead and grab this box here and say, well, we want to show that NICU is a larger part of what they do. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to make that one larger. And you can move things around here. Let's make this space larger. In general, I can grab groups of things and use the arrows to move them around. And you get the idea. In the end, this will create a smart art image. It can be edited, and it's one of the virtues of not using a separate editor. You can make your changes right in Word if you want to correct a typo, if you want to resize things, if you want to change the text or anything like that. But it keeps it in Word, and it doesn't take a lot of space, and it's easy to edit and easy to export. So there you have it, a couple different options for developing different visual aids. Returning to the task at hand here. So if you are going to be working on this, well, the question then is, hold on, what are you going to be doing? So if you're going to be inserting something in Word, all right, so we want, in this case, Smart Art. So the Smart Art tool is a tool for creating these dynamically viewable and editable materials. So here in Word, just go ahead and create a new page down here. And Smart Art, let's say this time we're going and we are using let's go with the hierarchy. So say you're explaining the decision-making process. So we could go with this labeled hierarchy. And so not only list people's titles or names, but also the levels there. So we could have corporate, we could have the ward or the department and things like that. And again, you can change the design. You can even change the type and say, well, actually, we don't need those labels. Let me switch to that one. And so in this example here, similarly, we see that there are a number of choices that I can look at to change how that's formatted. And so if I want to change this to a segmented cycle, like that, I can do that at the click of a button. And often when you're working with other things, you find that, oh, hey, actually, maybe this particular model works better because it shows that discrete action happening here. Or I can look at this and say, okay, I just want to glance through all my options and play around with this data before I decide on the final thing. So let's say I went with this arrangement instead, the upward arrow. And you can see, okay, so it no longer gives the sense of this is something that repeats, but it does give us the sense of, oh, we're moving forward in the process. And depending on the purpose of your diagram that you're creating or your flowchart, that may be something where it is helpful. Or you might decide, okay, well, we actually are most interested in showing this as a cycle, so let's go back there. And there we have it. So hope that's helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach us at the Writing Center. We are here to help. And if there's something you're not sure how to do it, or you're not sure if that's what the assignment is asking, just send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. That's it. Have a good night.